All right, here we go. 3, 2, 1.
Boom, and welcome to the Big Honker Podcast, brought to you by the evil geniuses at Boss Shot Shells. I'm Jeff Stanfield with the world-famous Andy Shaver.
Yes, sir. And we're getting what? We got 7s here now for teal season. And
Yep.
they're going to send 8s also for dove season?
Bunch of 8s for dove season.
Nice.
Going to let some of the dove hunters shoot some 8s with Boss, and then they'll never shoot nothing else again.
That's right. That's right. On the line with us today from the great state of Wisconsin, Mr. Donnie Vincent. How are you, sir?
Good, man. How are you boys doing?
We are excellent. It is in the 80s here in Texas. We've had a little bit of rain. Dove season's cranked up, so I don't think we can get any better.
That sounds good. It's also it's probably going to be 86 here in Wisconsin today, but I fly to Alaska on Monday, so that's just fine.
Now, what are you chasing there? I mean, you're all over the place right now.
Yeah. It's been. I was in Canada 2, 3, 4 days ago, and then I was in Illinois for the last couple of days, and then now I'm home. But moose hunting. I'm going to be doing a self-guided moose hunt in Alaska, spending a couple of weeks there.
And I mean, you're roughing it the entire time, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, not roughing it in the sense of what most people think roughing it is. I'll be staying in the teepee and eating freeze-dried food or snowshoe hares or ptarmigan or whatever I can harvest, and maybe a fish or two. But I'll be eating some freeze-dried and I'll be, hungry and maybe even a little bit chilly and wet most of the time. But yeah, if that's roughing it, that's what I'll be doing.
I'd say that's roughing it.
Is that your happy place in the world too, doing that?
Yeah, for sure. And it's not just hunting is really kind of weird for me. I don't look at hunting like most, or at least it doesn't feel that way. Hunting for me is literally this kind of like this lifeline, right? It's not. Have you guys read The Comfort Crisis by Michael Easter?
No, but I want to. It's on I've got a read list of like 15 books, and it's on there.
Yep. Okay, he did a beautiful job, and I'm not just saying that because I was part of the project, but he did a really good job. But it is, it's my soul food when I'm out in the wilderness. It's where I feel the most home, and it's where I feel the most connected, as this is going to sound really spiritual, but as feeling the most human. I think a lot of us, especially hunters, people that actively hunt right now, feel as though we were born a little bit too late in life. I hear Joe Rogan say often, he says, people always talk about the good old days, but right now is the very best time to live. We have the best food, the best cars, the best airplanes, and I couldn't disagree more. I would have much rather, I don't know that I would have wanted to be a true mountain man. I know the hardship was extreme back then, although I probably would have thrived in that situation as well. But I would have loved to be, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, where, it took you 2 weeks to get to Alaska and you would stay for 2 months when you were there, and you could really get into country that had to be earned to get into. And, right now guys can hire airplanes and helicopters, and I do that as well. I don't hire helicopters, but I hire airplanes. But yeah, it's definitely my happy place.
Do you think though that we get caught up in the romantic part of the mountain man nostalgia, but we forget about the fact that living that time in the woods and all the game that was there and the abundance of game, and someone like you could have done great in that, but you ain't have to worry about some Indian shooting you in the ass with a bow and arrow like you did back then. That would have been the bad part of being a mountain man, I think.
Yeah, that's right. But also that's the reward, right? You have native cultures that you would stumble into, and some of these guys would, white man, if you will, would travel into some of these valleys, and you look up on the hill and see 10 guys standing on the ledge, and you don't know if they're going to come down and want to trade with you, blankets for flour and sugar, or if they're going to come down and they're going to kill you, steal your horse, and take your horses and take your blankets and your sugar and whatever else. And so there's also that unknown also, kept you alive, right? That unknown kept your senses pinging. That's why we were so muscular back then. That's why our minds were, always constantly active. And even, obviously it doesn't even have to be native. A group of white guys, a group of other men can come and steal your goods. But yeah, I do think it's romanticized, right? We watch a movie of a guy in a trapper's cabin and he has firewood and his walls don't leak. And, he's putting wood in the stove and he's got, maple syrup or syrup that he's made from maple trees or blueberries. And he's got a moose hanging outside and he's got bear rugs or bison rugs to lay on. And, we look at that as very romantic. And I'm sure there were days like that for those gentlemen, but yeah, there's definitely a hardship, but it's so rewarding to put yourself through the paces. Like if I'm lucky enough to kill a moose in Alaska, his hindquarters are going to be 150 pounds each, right? So putting 150 pounds on your back is an immense amount of weight. And you do that, and now you're adding the uneven ground, the wet, the bears, the bugs, the weather, and it's downright defeating. Like literally your hips feel as though they're going to give out, your knees feel as though they're going to give out, but you hump that quarter back to the airstrip and man, you feel alive.
What do you do to prepare? So, it's September, like, are you working out year round knowing like, okay, in September, if I shoot a moose, it's going to be 150 pounds of dead weight and I got to sling that piece of meat over my back and hoof it
4 times.
Yeah. So like, are you just constantly pushing your body?
Constantly. Yep. Without pause. I'm in the gym minimum twice a week. Try to do more, try to do 3 times a week, but minimum twice a week. I'll go and push what I consider to be heavy weights. I'm not maxing out and I'm not doing these massive deadlifts. I'm not doing a type of circuit that you'd see in like CrossFit, or I'm not one of those guys over in the corner of the gym that's grunting all these big weights up and then dropping them on the ground. It's not, I do functional physicalities, right? I'm going through and doing a bunch of different maneuvers with a lot of weight. And hold on, you guys, FedEx is here.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Hey. Thank you.
That's when you know it's hunting season. FedEx dropping off the goods.
That's exactly right.
You're exactly right. That's camera equipment.
Dropping off the goods is what they're doing.
But yeah, so I'm in the gym, and then at least once a week there's a park near my house that has a really brutal set of stairs. It takes me 7.5 minutes to go round trip up and back down. It's like 500 stairs, but it's basically straight up a waterfall. And I put on a 50-pound weight vest and I'll hike into that, which is a couple of miles. And then I'll do those stairs for 10 rounds. And then I'll hike back out a couple of miles, which is, it's a pretty long downhill going in and it's a pretty long uphill going out. And then beyond that, I do some bicycling and other just functional fitness things. And one of the things that Michael Easter talks about post his book, The Comfort Crisis, is getting out and rucking, and the functionality that you have on your body with just having weight in a backpack and going over uneven ground, and how much more beneficial that is than running, and how many more calories it burns, things like that. But it really is, the harder I work out, the better I feel and the more alive I feel. I'm 47 and I feel 18. I feel way better than I felt when I was 18.
When you shoot a moose like that, how many actual trips does it take to get all that stuff out? Because people that have not ever seen a moose other than in pictures or driving down the road in a car, I was in Alaska. We was in the Minto Flats one time, and a guy shot a big moose, and they shot it right in the water. And they only got meat off one side of it. They couldn't flip it over. It was in the water and stuff. But it was it was an immense animal. And until you see a wild, 2,000 pounds up there for the big Alaskan moose?
They're probably a really big one will be like 1,800 pounds, and then the average one is probably like 1,300 pounds, something like that.
That's a lot of animal. How many times does it take? How many trips does it take for you to pack that animal out?
It'll be 7 or 8 trips. So it'll be, each quarter will be 1, and then the antlers and hide will be 1. So that's 5 right there. And then it's just how you break down. You have the 2 big chunks of neck meat, which is roughly like 60, 70 pounds a side.
Holy cow.
And then you have to take out the full rib cage, we used to be able to cut the meat out in between the ribs, but now you have to Fred Flintstone it. You got to take that whole thing. So you have to take both those sides, and you have to take both tenderloins, which are like 2 feet, 2 feet of meat in a pretty good tube. And then back straps are like 5 feet long and like at the thick as a loaf of bread. And then you have, and then basically you have scraps beyond that. But yeah, it's going to take us 7-8 backpack loads.
Have you ever eaten the nostril meat on the moose?
I haven't, but I've been with guys who have. I hunted with probably the best moose hunter I've ever hunted with in my life. Goodness gracious, his mind just escaped. His name is, it'll come to me in a second. He's a Huslia Indian. He lives in the town of Huslia. He's an Athabascan Indian. Oh my goodness, I can't think of his name. It'll come to me in a minute, but unbelievable native guy that I hunted with on the Kayakuk River in Alaska. And I would take, I took the meat that I would eat, and then we went through the moose with the meat that he would eat and the things that he wanted to eat. And it was really fascinating. And I've tried almost all of it, but, basically he had, and all of the meat from my moose that I killed with him, went to his family. And then, we ate a bunch when we were on the trip, but yeah, he would take like the mesentery, which is the clear membrane, that vascular clear membrane that holds the guts basically in a sack. He peeled all that off, which is huge. It's like the size of a hood of a car, but it was really cool. He peeled all that off, and then, which is really like, it's almost like saran wrap, gooey, sticky, wet. And then we laid it over a log, and it dried overnight into kind of like a giant cornflake. And then he would break that off, and he'd put it over our eggs in the morning. And so it was kind of like a piece of, almost like a thin, translucent pork rind, if you will, was over our eggs, and it was very good. It was very tasted a little bit like kind of like organ meat, or it tasted a little bit like I guess maybe like a pork rind or whatever. But it's really good. So I've tried some of those things, but that's typically not the type of pieces of the animal that I harvest beyond all the regular meat that we just described, and then also the heart and liver. But I only take a portion of the liver because it's massive.
What is there any nutritional benefit to this this piece of meat that you would put over your? I don't even know if you'd call it meat, would you?
It's not. Yes, it's a membrane, but yes, membrane. Absolutely, it would have nutritional value. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, just about any of that stuff. Like if you were stranded, right? If I were stranded or needed to utilize every last scrap, we'd eat the brain, we'd eat the eyeballs. There's you guys have probably heard that in survival books, but those items are absolutely chock full of fat. So we'd eat those things, and they look, obviously you look at a moose brain, it's pretty uncomfortable to look at any brain type material, and I've never eaten brain, but I don't think any of that stuff would be as foul tasting, or as once you got past the texture, I don't think it'd be that bad.
Yeah, I think it's in your mind.
Yeah, once you get past that.
The pork deal, the nose deal, I saw a video, and they were in Alaska in this place. They make a loaf out of it, like pickle loaf or something, and they use the nose, and they eat the nose and and the lips and stuff. And I don't know what the name is, but it's a delicacy. But the Eskimos, or I don't know what you call the people that live, the natives, the Indians, the Eskimos, whatever they are. They have different things. Have you ate whale or seal with them where they did in the oil?
I've not eaten either of those. The only thing that I've eaten with native guys, I've eaten several different preparations of salmon where they dry them over the summer. And then also I've eaten kind of a cold soup that's made out of the salmon eggs. And then I've also eaten the fermented salmon that they bury in the ground and then let ferment over the summer. And then I've eaten sea otter. I've eaten all of those things with native guys, and I've eaten other native things that I wasn't entirely sure. I've eaten Eskimo ice cream or Indian ice cream, which is actually Crisco, sugar, whitefish, and berries, whatever berries in season.
I've seen that. So is that any good? Is that any good?
Yeah, it tasted good. It's slippery, right? Its main body is Crisco. So but a lot of times these guys, they're working so hard that they're piling all this fat into their body, and but man, that their shiver rate is high, right? If they're in the northern Alaska.
That's great. Well, rate this salmon. So this fermented salmon does not sound good to a boy from West Texas. How was it?
No, horrible. It's
That's what I
one
thought.
of the worst things. Yeah, I mean, if I cut a 1-inch cube and put it in one of your homes, everyone would evacuate. Yeah.
And do you feel
and the Inuit and the Athabascan Indians, they do this. And from what I understand, some of the young guys that I would work with or come across, I'd say, do you guys, they call them stinkheads. I said, do you guys eat stinkheads? And they're like, no. That's that's an old timer thing. And then some of the young people I met, I said, yes, I eat stinkheads. I've been eating it since I was a baby. So they actually look forward to this process at the end of summer. But unless you've been doing it since you're an infant, it's not going to go well. It was
Right.
Not only was it didn't taste good, it was, it physically affected your body. Like it putting it in your mouth, it was really bad. Really uncomfortable.
Did you feel like you had to try it, or you was going to disrespect them?
No, not to that level, but they were literally rolling on the ground at my response. Like, couldn't walk. They were laughing so hard. And then they were speaking Yupik, which I'm sure wasn't complimentary to me, but I couldn't help but laugh at what they were saying because they were so happy about it. And I was with this one guy named Charlie. He's an elder. They called him Nabai Cook. And he's got no teeth. And he just reminded me of the old man in Never Cry Wolf that didn't have any teeth. And he would laugh. His laugh was so contagious, and he would just he'd laugh like he didn't have any teeth. But he talked to the natives in Yupik because some of the elders didn't speak English, and then he turned to me and then he'd simplify what they said, like they think you're really funny, and they think your backpack is a parachute. He'd say things like that.
They probably were saying, I bet $20 he would not eat the stinkhead.
Yeah. And then I ate this soup.
That don't sound good either.
No, that wasn't good either. The young lady that prepared it, cooking might not be her forte, but that one was tough. But they did make some stuff. They would dry salmon. They'd strip, and you guys have seen photos of that where it's hanging on the side of the river. And hang them over the willow bushes. That stuff I would hike 900 miles to eat. That stuff it's basically raw salmon that has cured into somewhat of a jerky. And I ate so much of that while I was there because I used to spend 5 months there near the villages. I would eat so much of that. I would literally, my forearms would be greasy with salmon fat because I'd be eating it so much every day that literally salmon fat would just be rolling down my forearms.
It amazes me how badly we have preached diet here in America. Like, we've got everything backwards, especially like if you look at the food pyramid, like it's all they say carbohydrates are the most important, food group that you can eat. And I mean, it's just, we did everything the wrong way for so long.
That's right. And it's all big business. Everything that we do is big business, right down to skim milk. Like literally skim milk was something that we used to send powdered milk to our soldiers in World War I and World War II. And the farmers were the ones that were sending this skim milk in the form of powder. Dairy farmers used to throw that out. And then when the war started, basically the United States came to farmers and said, how do we get milk product to our soldiers? And, they devised powdered milk and they would send it over. Well, when the war ended, these dairy farmers were like, hey, we've been making a lot of money off this skim milk. Like, how can we kind of bring this back into the light, and they are literally launched an ad campaign to bring skim milk, which is literally just sugar, to bring skim milk back into the grocery stores. And they pitched it to housewives saying, if you want to lean up, if you want to lose weight, stop drinking whole milk, which is basically the only milk that's actually decent for you, and start drinking skim milk to lose those extra pounds. It's going to be fat free. And most all of our nutrition based science is completely controlled by big markets that are literally just looking to sell to us, keep us addicted, and keep us sick. It's horrible. I was in an elementary school at the beginning of the summer, and I just happened to walk through the cafeteria, and they had all those posters that they had when we were in elementary school. They had all those things, food pyramid, all those things. I read every single poster, and every single poster was wrong. Every single poster was a lie.
Mm-hmm.
and it was it's ingrained into us. It's beat into us. It is incredibly difficult for somebody that's going to be uninitiated. It's incredibly difficult to eat healthy. And you hear this, if you're paying attention, you hear bodybuilders and stuff say, when you grocery shop, you need to just grocery shop on the outside of the store, right? You go into the produce section, and there's the meat section, and then you miss the entire grocery store. But what do Americans do? We go up and down every aisle, and it comes in a jar, box, or worse of all, a plastic container.
Yeah. Stay on the outside, you'll be okay. You start venturing into the middle, and you're gonna enter into the danger zone.
But you know what?
But that stuff,
our government is now targeting people that have gardens. I mean, just 2 years ago, the lady in Michigan, crackhead lady, she was telling people it's against the law to plant your own garden. Had a guy on the podcast the other day. No, I was on another podcast the other day, and a guy was talking about where he lives at, peaches. Well, this dicambia pesticide is wiping out. He said nobody in their county can even have a garden anymore because the farmers sprayed dicambia on their cotton. It's wiped out peach orchards. It's wiped out everybody's gardens and stuff. So
it drifted or what?
Yeah, it's terrible. They say it just wipes out everything. Yeah. And I'm going to get some hate mail on this from somebody that sprays dicambia, but it's really, I guess, it very detrimental to the world. But fresh gardens and stuff, that's the way to go. We can't have them down here because it's too hot. We made no gardens this year at all, but it's hard.
It's very hard.
But man, that's one thing about up north where y'all live. Y'all got beautiful gardens, and y'all can go to a farmer's market or a fruit stand. And I don't understand why people. I'm a fat boy, but I love fresh fruits and vegetables. I love them, and I love salad. You know. But I don't understand why we don't push more people eating fresh fruits and vegetables than all the other shit. I mean,
because the people can't make money off of that.
That's exactly right.
That's
what it's money. I mean, farmers market. You ought to be trying. If you're a local grocery store, you ought to have every farmer in your area try to grow some fresh produce, and we'll sell it for you, and you can make some money. Have you been to Have you been to Vermont ever?
I've been to Vermont several times. I was born and raised in Connecticut.
Have you been to Woodstock, Vermont?
Potentially, but not. If I had been, it's when I was a child.
They have a market there that is the most awesome market I've ever been to in my entire life. And I'm going to drive. We go watch the leaves. Me and my wife go watch the leaves change every year.
Old people stuff.
I call it old people vacation. And I just, I appreciate Mother Nature, but we go there, but we're going to drive probably 2 hours just to go to this market again. But they've got carrots the size of a Yeti cup in there, and they got all kinds, and it's everywhere. And there's all kinds of markets like that. But those people are so blessed to be able to live somewhere where they can grow gardens and vegetables like that. But if you go to the Alaska State Fair, they have all these world records, right? Because it's sunlight 24 hours,
right?
So their vegetables grow all summer, all day. So you Google biggest zucchini, biggest lettuce, it's all Alaska.
Yeah, they just had a new pumpkin that I saw yesterday. 1,274 pounds something pumpkin. I just saw it on Yahoo on one of the news deals just 2 or 3 days ago. It's a new world record pumpkin. I thought, Jesus Christ, boy, someone could live in that thing.
That's a house for people.
I love it.
I never thought about that, but the 24 hours of sunlight.
Just constantly growing.
And I'm assuming it's the same way in Norway or somewhere like that also probably has the same stuff.
Yep. Absolutely. And then everyone I know in Alaska, they all have greenhouses in their yard. It's very, very common to have a greenhouse in your yard in Alaska.
Really?
Yeah, because they want their produce all winter. They want, any growing season they can harvest. They want to grow their own produce as much as possible. So, I mean, literally to see a little tool shed here in Wisconsin or an outbuilding, something like that's very, very common. But in Alaska, that is also common. But a lot of houses have greenhouses.
And I guess they have lights that they put grow lights. So in the backwoods of Appalachia where they're growing marijuana, they're growing actual vegetables in Alaska then is what they're doing with their grow houses.
Yeah, marijuana, geez Louise.
But it's funny how all this is kind of coming back. I remember when I was a teenager, so early 2000s, those people were considered like hippies and yuppies. If you were growing your own fruits and vegetables, those, why are you doing that? You can get it at a grocery store or, whatever. But like it's all, I feel like the momentum, I think people are becoming more educated, and I feel this changing of the tide, if you will, that I think more people potentially would start doing their own garden.
I think the food shortages we're going through in our country right now has got a lot to do with that too. People are waking up that, hey, we can't rely on someone else to feed us. We better be able to feed our own family or be prepared for it.
Well, and I think it also kind of goes back to, I think Big Pharma kind of plays a little bit into it, because people are realizing, like, they're realizing once you start getting on this medication, you're not getting off of it unless you make, and that's Big Pharma's goal. Like, why would we want to give you a one-time pill that would fix whatever's your problem when we can have you constantly coming back and feeding the system? So I think everything is starting to shift a little bit. I think people, hopefully,
they don't
through all
want to heal
this,
you, they want a customer.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly right. Why heal this person when I can make them a lifelong customer, like you said? So
absolutely.
I hope people are waking up to the scam.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to take, I think we're probably aligning. It was funny. I said this, not funny, but I mentioned this on Rogan when I did his podcast. I said, there's likely going to be a tide coming, a disease that's going to come, a virus, a bacteria, something is going to come down the pike that's going to affect human beings in a very adverse way. And going to knock our population down. And then when COVID happened, I had all these, 1,000 people wrote me and said, "Oh my God, you predicted this. You were right." And I didn't write even any of them back, I don't think, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about COVID that killed a subset of people that were, already had comorbidities and were already in certain conditions and also in certain age classes. I'm not talking about that at all. I was referring to something that is going to be catastrophic, something that's going to wipe out half the Earth's population or something like that. We can't continue, or maybe we can with technology, but it's seemingly that we can't continue at this rate. To me, it just, you see this in the animal kingdom, you see it with Mother Nature, you see it with the Earth. Eventually, our natural systems are going to take this Earth back, and it just, we live as human beings. We seem to live a parasitic lifestyle. We seem to just be wiping everything out. And so who knows where it's going to go. I just read something yesterday, actually, that populations are starting to decline.
Yes.
Because young women aren't having babies anymore, or aren't, it's trending that way, that people are far more focused on being career oriented than family oriented. And then on top of it, I listened to another podcast with a gentleman who was saying that all death mortality rates are up post-COVID, and all birth rates and encapsulating birth rates are also quite down post-COVID. And so he wasn't making any inferences to the vaccine or to COVID or to other ailments. He's just saying, in general, why are all mortality deaths, all-cause mortality deaths, why are they up 10% post-COVID, and why are birth rates down? And, there's a number of variables that would have to be considered to actually extrapolate any information from there. But clearly, as human beings, like, we are a fraction of what we once were. And I saw this, I was watching a Fred Bear video a couple of weeks ago, and they didn't focus on this, but it occurred to me when I saw this. At first, I was kind of like, what is this lady doing? But when Fred Bear, I forget which video it was of his, but he was in Alaska shooting brown bears and black bears. But he was filming in this little seaside town. Let's just call it Sitka. I don't know what it was, but let's just call it Sitka. And they're filming the town. And as they're filming the town, there's this lady comes out of her house on the wharf. She comes out of her house with a metal trash can, walks over to the ocean, and dumps all of her trash into the ocean. And at first I thought, well, what the hell is she doing? Mm-hmm. And then I realized that everything that's in her trash can go in the ocean.
Right.
So it's either made out of tin, which is going to rust and disintegrate, or it's made out of glass, which is going to turn into sand and disintegrate, or it is a byproduct of peeling an apple or a banana, and that's also going to break down. So literally everything that she's dumping, this is the 1950s, 1960s, everything she's dumping into the ocean is just going to go back to Mother Nature. But obviously we can't do that now.
No. I did not realize glass would break down and become sand. I did not recognize that. That's interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. A breakdown. Yeah.
Huh. Well, any kind of metal you stick in the ocean, like they've built reefs where they would sink these Liberty ships after World War II. They had all these Liberty ships, which was taking goods from America to our troops overseas. Well, they had all these extra ones. There was thousands and thousands of them. Well, like in the Gulf of Mexico, they sunk 2 or 3 or 4 of them off the Texas coast. Well, that built that coral grew on that, and it built a reef, so it was good for the fish. It gave some structure for the smaller fish. So some things you put back in the ocean is a good thing. But
absolutely,
plastic is not one of them.
Not one of them. As I'm drinking out of a plastic bottle.
And I hunted Maine last year, and this gentleman that I met on the hunt, I was hunting moose. This gentleman I met, super nice guy. I asked him what he did for work, and he engineers landfills. And I was like, oh, that's kind of fascinating. And he said, it's fascinating and depressing. And I said, is it? And he said, absolutely. He said he cannot go through any store. And he said, like, particularly, like, for instance, he'll walk into a big box store, whatever. And he's like, all he sees on the shelves is garbage, because not only is the package garbage, the shelf itself is going to become garbage, and all of the stuff that's in the package is going to become garbage. It's all just trending towards becoming garbage, whether it be, a razor or a plastic bag or a lawnmower or a kid's toy. Like, it's all going to his landfill. So he's like, all I see in production is pre-garbage. That's how I see the entire world.
Pre-garbage.
Well, I'm gonna tell you, at Abilene, Texas, which is south of us, and we go there.
It's our big town.
It's our big town that
that's
we
where
go
we
to.
That's where we have to grocery shop.
It's 70 miles, 80 miles away. It's 120. In that little area, there's probably 150 to 75,000 people. I've been going to Abilene. I grew up in Wichita Falls, so when me and Michelle got married, we go there. So it's 25 years I've been going to Abilene, Texas. When I first went to Abilene, Texas, they had a dump on the north side of town. Never even knew it was there. Now it's 2 mountains that are 1,000-foot tall.
Mountains.
And they getting bigger and bigger all the time. And I'm like, how? I mean,
what's the end game here?
You're gonna have snow-capped peaks around Abilene one day and trash. But I mean, it is growing. Yeah. It is huge now. And 25 years ago, there's 2 of them, and there wasn't 1 of them 25 years ago.
But that Abilene's population has grown.
Right.
So, I mean, it's just, where do we get off of this train at?
Well, when I'm 54, and so I don't really remember people burning trash that much, but my dad grew up in a little town called Buffalo, Kansas, southeast Kansas, a small town. I'm talking 300 people maybe at the most. If everybody was there and they had their kids visiting, there was 300 people. But they all, when I was a little kid, they had a brick oven, incinerary, or whatever you want to call it in the back. They burned their trash. Everybody in town did.
Sure.
You know what? There wasn't no trash nowhere. It was a clean town because everybody burned their trash. I can't believe burning trash back then is worse than what we're doing today. I really can't.
Sure.
I just don't.
Sure.
I just don't think it was that bad. I think burning trash was better off.
What about like the smoke and stuff for your global?
If you go to China right now and those people cooking over those clay pots and stuff in their little villages and stuff, they're doing more than burning trash. And it happens every day. I just don't think. I think that we would be better off to burn it and get rid of it than we were to just keep storing it. Can you imagine Can you imagine the temperature in that landfill at Abilene? What it must be like, or in the bottom of that thing after 25 years of bacon?
Yeah, I'm curious of the breakdown process, how it affects local soils, and of course we're all competing for the groundwater. So it's curious. It's an interesting time for sure. It is. I mean, it's the most interesting time. I remember seeing with my parents. I remember watching the news and seeing wars break out. I remember seeing, you'd see, like a world event like, the Oklahoma bomber. I think his name's Timothy McVeigh or whatever. You'd see something like that play out, or you'd see a terrorist act, and you'd see, I'd see these things with my parents, or you'd see a hurricane coming to shore, and you'd see all these catastrophes. You'd see the crises that were happening in the Middle East, and hostages being taken, and airplanes being commandeered. And
you are showing your age.
Hijacked. And so I remember seeing all these things and thinking about the world was ups and downs. And I remember thinking about how kind of safe how I felt in the United States with our U.S. president and our military and the men that we had involved, the men and women that were kind of leading our country and standing for our country. And I was slightly naive to how these systems played out, but I really thought that, I remember asking my dad one time, and I don't want this to become political, but I remember asking my dad one time when I was little, I said, how in the world, and I was way too young to even understand this, or even to really ask this question, but I said, how in the world does a single man run the United States? How does a single individual know enough? Because in my mind, he had to do all jobs. That's
Right.
what I was thinking. He had to be a pilot. He had to be, a farmer. So I was like, how is one man? And my dad said, oh, it's not one man. He has systems of people around him that help him do the work and help him make decisions. And it's kind of this idea of autocracy. They go forth with the best idea that comes from a collective group. And I was really proud of our military. When I was a little boy, I had all fighter planes and aircraft carriers and all this stuff that I played with. That's what I like to play with. I don't even know how in the world I didn't go in the military is beyond me, with my interest level in it. But I see, like right now, the United States in the last 4, 5, 6 years, it just seems like an absolute melting pot of disasters. And I don't want to say I'm losing my confidence of mankind, because I still meet people every day that blow my mind. I do a lot of, in our film company, we do a lot of work with military groups. We do a lot of work with special forces groups, and I get to meet some of these Army Rangers and Green Berets and Navy SEALs and colonels and generals. And these guys, just some of them are just, it's such a pleasure to meet them. And different industries of business, whether it be men or women, and kind of blow my mind. But there's a collective group that, and I see some things that happen on social media where, for some reason, survival groups really have wrapped their head around the photo of me carrying my mountain lion out in the snowstorm. And it gets posted all the time. And I get all these comments from people, and, that I poach this animal, that I poach this endangered species, that all these people that are totally against hunting. And I just think about the kind of the degradation of our mindsets as men and women. We all come from hunters and gatherers. I've spoke about that quite a lot. We all know that. If you have any wherewithal at all, you understand that that's where we come from. And so where has the degradation kind of begun, to where we don't realize what it is to be one with the environment, to be one with this kind of predator and prey model. I wonder what happens if our electricity doesn't come on and our water doesn't come out of our faucet, and the grocery stores suddenly have nothing on the shelves, which we've kind of experienced on a minute scale. There wouldn't be a single, not one anti-hunter.
No.
You close grocery stores and restaurants today, not one person will be anti-hunting. Not one person will be, unless it's a dietary restriction, not one person will be against meat or be against consuming raw food, raw vegetables, whatever it be. And we literally are allowed to develop our own mindsets because other people are providing comfort for us, from the police to firemen to grocery store owners to farmers, ranchers. Like, we're provided for. And so we get to sit on a high horse and feel like we're protected. But I don't feel very protected anymore. And so even more so than ever, I've always wanted to stand up for myself, but now it's tenfold.
Yeah. Well, we're insulated from the reality of this life is very, very fickle. And you, whether you know it or not, you're on this razor's edge all the time. And we have become insulated in this bubble wrap of life and death situations. Like you talk about the mountain man. If you were to fall down a mountain, break your femur, it was a death sentence, most likely. I mean,
it was a death sentence, period, end of story.
I mean, that was it. A broken leg would have killed you 150 years ago, 200 years ago. You're done. It's it.
Same as an appendicitis.
If you're appendix burst on the side of the mountain, or
diabetes,
or just the front ranges of Texas in the 1800s, you have an appendix burst or gangrene. But we have just become so insulated to the fact that shit can and will often go sideways, and you better be able to adapt and you better be able to overcome. But like you said, people feel protected. Well, if I get sick, I'll just go to the doctor. If somebody's in my house, I'll call the cops. And it's just, I'll rely on big food market to bring me my groceries. And it's like, that's not a guarantee.
Well, another thing, Donnie, you said that when you grew up and you aged yourself when you talked about the planes and the hijackings. I hadn't thought about that at all. I'm 7 years older than you, but that was a pretty common thing on the news when I was a kid. You always heard about a plane being hijacked, but we lived in a different world because the United States, our own government, good or bad or whatever, did a great job of keeping us away from all the problems the rest of the world was having for all those years. We didn't see any of that. We were
part of that's probably social media too, though.
What?
That we see
that does have a lot to do with it now, but things happen here. Like I remember the Timothy McVeigh, the Oklahoma City bombing. I was in college and I worked at Shepherd Air Force Base, and I left the base in a government vehicle, and I went and was dicking around in town doing stuff I wasn't supposed to be. I was supposed to be at work, and I come back to the base, and they got this line a mile long, people getting on the base. They'd locked down the base unless you were supposed to be there. Well, I had a badge and everything. They let me ride in, and boy, I got to work, and they're like, "Where the hell have you been?" Well, and I saw it on the news. Well, that morning when I saw it on the news, they thought it was just a gas pipeline. Well, if that happens today, the first thing they think is going to be a terrorist attack. But that was the different world we lived in compared to today. But
you couldn't conceive the evil, so it had to just be some gas.
Never would have even thought anybody would want to blow up a building with a bunch of kids. Never would have. Nobody would have thought that. But if you would have lived in Israel at the time or Greece or anything like that, that wouldn't have just shocked them because they'd been dealing with that shit forever. And the United States is finally catching up to the rest of the world with shit show stuff.
Well, I just think things are just way too easy, and people have time to think of these things now.
Yeah. Well, like the food thing, Donnie's exactly right. You close a grocery store down for 3 weeks and you go out hunting to shoot a deer to feed your family. Nobody, the bunny huggers all of a sudden are going to be like, "Hey, do you think you could pull me some over to my house too? Because we're hungry."
Well, and I mean, if you look at society today, we hate losing. So if something's difficult, we just we'll try it once or twice and we'll just say to hell with it. And, you know, and we're never bored. And hunting, you're gonna suck for a long time, and there's gonna be long stretches that are probably not the most exciting. And those are two things that Americans hate right now.
Yeah, and it's it's just people are entertained. I watch people all the time. I'm the same. Like my phone's right here.
Yeah, it's
right?
ridiculous.
But
I've got a big problem.
Like you watch people, and everyone has their phone. Like even, and I'm not being a creep here. It's going to sound creepy, but I'm not being a creep here. But you even, if you're on a beach in Florida and there's a girl in a string bikini,
phone,
still holding her phone, doesn't have her purse, doesn't have anything else, but she'll still have her phone in her hand, and it's probably going to be twice the size of this one. And we just, it just has become a completely different. I had a buddy of mine, and I totally get it. I had a buddy of mine. He's not necessarily like this, but he had to get off of Instagram because he'd see all these guys on Instagram with giant bucks and big caribou and elk, and he would feel jealous. He would feel like, oh my God, like I'm not out there, and this guy just arrowed a 400-inch elk, or I'm not out here, and this guy just arrowed a 180-inch whitetail. And why? And he got off because he's like, it did not help my mental state to think about what is going on in someone else's life. And that's what Instagram, whether it be my Instagram, your Instagram, anyone's Instagram, these are, and everyone knows this, these are flash bulbs. This is a second in your life. And most people, it's completely set up, right? Like, my Instagram consists of images that were honestly and sincerely taken while we were adventuring. But literally, I have a photographer shooting these images, and yes, I'm like hiking up out of a ridge, and then I'll be like, "Hey, Donnie, hold on a second." And I take 5 steps back. I can see the sun, the rays are coming through, ready, action, shoots it just like what Cho does. Like, oh, yep, I really like this one. And the words in my Instagram are honestly in my head. These are things that I think about, feel about. I keep a journal. The images are honestly things that I'm doing or have done, but I have horrible, like, my house is a freaking mess right now. I leave for Alaska on Monday. I've got literally crap ever. I got guns and ammo. And if you came in here right now, you'd probably leave me some money on my counter and be like, this guy's having a really tough time. And so things are, you know, life is tricky for us. And I just think we are so busy and so overwhelmed with entertainment and with, I just don't even know, you know, I really think about kids and everyone has beat this to death, but I really honestly think about when I was a kid, get on my BMX bike, my skinny little arms and my skinny little legs, ride my ass up down to my buddy's house. I grew up, my best friend growing up, his name's Anthony Shaw. He's a black kid, mixed race kid. His mom was white, his dad was blacker than an ace of spades. God, he looked like a giant gorilla. He was such a nice man. His name was Leonard Shaw. That man used to pick me up and throw me around the house like I was an envelope. And he would, and I would go down there, and it never once occurred to me that he was a black kid. I mean, zero. Didn't even enter my radar screen. And now that seems to be the only thing that we can talk about. And I think about, you know, being able to pick up a cell phone and text your friend, where I used to literally go down, walk up the stairs, knock on the door, and sit there and, you know, wait for his mom and be like, hey, is Anthony here? Yeah, he's oh, Donnie, he's down at Chris Duff's house. And I'd be like, oh, okay. So when I ride my bike down to Chris Duff's house, and, you know, we'd go out and play, and we'd sit there and look at each other, bored out of our minds, and be like, hey, let's go down to the creek. We were still bored, just like kids are bored today. We're like, hey, let's go down to the creek and try to catch some fish, or see if we can catch a snake or a toad, turtles, whatever. And then, you know, and then maybe we'll come back here and we'll work on a go-kart engine or whatever it is. And we'd have this little posse, kids riding around on BMX bikes, and we do all of these things. And we'd go home, we'd have dinner with our parents, and it would be a can of corn and a can of peas and a chicken, and we'd eat dinner. And then, you know, and I was telling another friend of mine the other day, it was so funny, like when you get in a fight with your girlfriend, like you want to know how pissed off you are, try to quickly dial somebody with a rotary phone. Like, are you freaking kidding? Like, oh, that, like, by the time you get her 7 digits in,
right,
you're calmed down.
Yeah.
It's like the epitome of counting to 10. And so I just worry about kids and cell phones, and I really worry about marijuana and vaping. And you know, you hear about a lot of people that people are way too comfortable these days talking about drugs and vaping, and yeah, I don't know. It just makes me nervous, man. It makes me nervous that people aren't camping and hiking and fishing and canoeing, and I feel like if I could take everyone with me on this moose hunt, if I could somehow hit an easy button and say, I'm going to take 5,000 people from downtown Minneapolis on this moose hunt, and you're all going to sit there on the mountain with me, and we're going to watch wolves, and we're going to pick blueberries, and we're going to watch hopefully moose, and we're going to see grizzly bears. And when we get up in the middle of the night to go poop, the hair's going to stand up on the back of our neck, because we're going to be looking at all these bushes like, anybody home?
Mm-hmm.
You know, did a big lumbering grizzly bear come and curl up like a dog and sound asleep 50 yards from my tent, and I'm going out at night to go poop? That type of physical, visceral response of going into the night. You don't have a cage. You're not at the zoo. If he wants to come, he's going to come. And it's either you're going to be proficient with your weapon and your mind and the situation, and he's going to make a good decision as a bear, or you're going to make a good decision as a man, and things are going to go well, or they're going to go horribly bad. But you have this potential of it's just absolutely visceral. It makes every fiber and cell in your body pinging. And I wish I could take everyone with me, because then they could sit down and experience it, just like I did with Michael Easter in the Comfort Crisis. He had never hunted in his life, never really put himself in a difficult situation. I shouldn't say that. He had his own demons that he was dealing with in his life, but he had never been in a difficult physical hunting situation. Took him to the mountains, watched him get lost, literally watched him get lost.
You watched it? You just watched it all play out?
Watched him get lost. Literally sent him to bring something to the top of this mountain. All he had to do, and where we are, there's no trees. All he had to do was hike up this mountain, and we had killed 2 caribou. He had to hike to the top of this mountain, drop something off. I actually had him dropping off. We had 2 cameras because we were going to backpack these bulls out not whole, but in one trip, all of them in one trip. So everyone's going to be really heavy. And it's just like this big hill, call it a mountain, but we were far enough into the Arctic that big mountains kind of look like hills. And I said, go up there, drop these off and come back down. And he wanted to move his body. So he said, okay, I'll do that. And then he went up, and then hours later, we're finishing up the caribou, and I'm like, man, he should be back by now. And I look, and he is a mile east of us, and he is heading east. And I think to myself, oh, awesome. That's where our airstrip is. We have additional fuel, and we left a little thing of cooking oil over there. He's going to get additional fuel and cooking oil so we can eat caribou tonight. That's what he's doing. I was like, what an intuitive guy to do this. And then
what a forward
as
thinker.
we're getting ready, we're going up the mountain, and it was so funny. But I'm with William Altman, who's a photographer at Sigmanta, and then I'm with another gentleman who is also working as a photographer, and I'm with those 2 guys, and I look and I go, oh, of course, look it, a grizzly bear is coming into the valley, and I'm the only one still with a caribou tag, so I'm thinking, great, this grizzly bear is going to come down, find the carcasses, start feeding on them. All the caribou are going to stop using this valley because this bear is in here feeding, and either my tag's not going to get filled, or I'm going to have to call the pilot, and we're going to have to move to go to a new location so I can fill my caribou tag. And I'm looking at this bear with my naked eyes, and I'm like, hey, he's walking right down the valley. And then I kind of keep peering, and I go, I think he's walking on his hind legs. And so then William raises up his binoculars and he goes, your bear is wearing a watch. You can see it glistening on his wrist. And then we looked, we're like, oh my God, that's Michael. He thinks he's coming back to us. He's leaving us. We're 250 miles north of the Arctic Circle. Where he's headed, there is nothing. And so we had to get to him, and we got to him and got him and turned him around and obviously brought him with us. But had we not seen him those 2 little glimpses, A, we would have not known where he was.
Right.
And B, it would have been that night we would have instilled, we would have called search and rescue, and we would have had probably Blackhawks probably would have been looking for him in the Arctic.
What do you do in that situation? Do you have like flares that you could shoot up to kind of redirect him, or is it you're solely relying on a helicopter?
Yeah, we'd have to call. I'd have to call the pilot or hit my inReach, hit my SOS, and then search and rescue would have to contact me via my inReach, and then they'd have to ask me, you're only really allowed to hit your contact if you're going to have a loss of eyesight or a loss of life. So him hiking away from us would be a loss of life. He's going to be dead in not too long a time. There will be water for him to drink, and he can go without food for quite a long time, but exposure is going to be a real issue for him. And so I would just have to call, and in that area of the country, they'd probably scramble Blackhawks from Anchorage, and they'd probably come up and start flying grids to find him. And then he, as the lost one, would have to go into his set of survival skills and either spell out SOS in mud in a gravel hillside, spell out SOS, or if he had fire starting kit in his kit, which he should have, he'd have to, build a signal fire.
So do you have like a kit that like, I'm not taking this off no matter what? It's got a fire starter in it. It's got just my basic need. If I were to somehow get turned around, I'm not taking this pack off because it's got just the bare necessities. Do you have something like that?
100%. And it doesn't leave if I'm in a float plane, it's with me. No matter what, if I have to get out of an airplane or if we crash an airplane, like that bag is with me, will not fly without it.
People don't realize until they go to Alaska how in the middle of fucking nowhere you are.
And thick?
It's just not the thickness. It's just, there's no
just
point
of
call
reference.
911 and someone be there in 10 minutes or 15 minutes. Like anywhere else in the United States, you're within 30 minutes of help.
Right.
Anywhere in the lower 48. It's not that case up there.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
Have you ever thought about being on the show alone, one of them shows? Because you would be a prime candidate to be there to win that thing.
Yep, they've asked me to do it 2 or 3 times now, and I just haven't. I've definitely considered it. Like I've talked about it with the crew and everything, but we just have a lot of work that we have before us. But we've kind of talked about, as silly as it is, we've kind of broken down how long it would take and the amount of prize money that's involved, and so I'm not saying I'm not going to sit here and say it's not worth it, but at this point in time, giving it an attempt is not. But yeah, they generously, very generously, and I'm very humbled and flattered that they basically have asked me the last 3 years to do it, 2 or 3 years, something like that. But I think it's been 3 years they've asked me to participate.
It's $2 million now for 90 days, isn't it?
I don't know. The last time I checked, they did one season where it was $1 million if you made it 100 days, and then every other season has been 500,000 just to win.
$1 million for 100 days is not bad.
If you can do it.
That's not bad.
But I mean, if you don't do it, then all that time's wasted.
You can win. Yep. Well, I wouldn't know if it would be wasted, right? It'd be an experience, but
That's true.
But you could definitely lose the show. You could definitely lose it with something outside of your control.
Right.
Broken leg. I've only watched one season or a portion of one season. I watched for that Alaska guide Roland won, and there was a young lady there. Like there was maybe like eight, and they were going to pay everyone $1 million that made it 100 days, and she was pulled out. She had frostbite, and she was pulled out at like 90 days.
Yeah.
So she had 10 days left, and she was going to get $1 million. And she wanted to continue, but her feet were turning black, and they flew a doctor in, and he's like, "Sorry, we're going to pull you out." And she seemed to be okay with it. I don't know what she went through post. And then there was another young lady that was damn near there, and I watched her. She had a couple of fish on, and you just watch that realness. Like she had a couple of fish on, and they got off right at the hole, and she just literally sat on the ice and bawled.
Defeated.
And you sit
lowest of the low.
Sit in a room with men. You sit in a room with a bunch of guys or whatever, and they're like, yeah, like, oh my god, like, are you giving me a break? And I'm like, that chick is the lowest of lows. Like she just saw a buttery, fat, supple dinner, something that was going to make her feel warm, full, going to allow her to sleep. 18 inches under the ice, and it just popped off. Like she had it. She did her job of jiggling the lure. The fish came in and ate. She had fought the fish all the way up, and it came unbuttoned 18 inches under the ice. Like that is so defeating. And she actually threw in the towel, tougher than hell, And I actually talked about Alone with a group of hunting guides and their wives a few years ago. I won't tell you where I was because I don't want to reveal who I was sitting with, but they're like, "This, give me a break. This would be a vacation." And it would. For a guy like me, it would be like a vacation if my shelter was good. If my shelter didn't catch on fire, if my shelter didn't fail, my shelter was good for the winter temperatures, and I harvested a large game animal. If those two things happen, a guy like me is on easy street. You remove either one of those things, and a guy like me is in real trouble. Anyone is in real trouble. You restrict their food. 100 days is too long to go without eating real calories. You're going to start to really waste away. And so you restrict your food to small game animals that you're inconsistently catching, or berries that you're inconsistently finding and obviously aren't available in winter, or you have a shelter that fails. And I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're SEAL Team 6, you're done. Your goose is cooked. You are out of the game. And so I listened to these people. I didn't really add to the conversation, but they're like, "This would be so easy. Give me a break. I can do this with my eyes closed." And I was like, "You can do it with your eyes closed if the stars align."
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
On paper, you only need 1 or 2 breaks to, like you said.
That's right.
All I need to catch a couple breaks, and I've got it. But if you don't catch those breaks, you're in deep water.
The guy last year that won it had the best. I've watched every year of it, but I wait till it comes on Netflix so I can watch all 12 episodes in 2 days because I don't want to wait each week to do it. But the guy that did it last year, he made the best shelter ever, and that's the key. And these people dick around with these shelters, and it's getting colder and colder and colder, and they're sleeping with a damn with just some ferns on top of them and trying to build a fire and stuff. The guy that won it last
Yeah.
year, he built a rock house, basically. He found a dugout area and he used rocks, and he built him one all out of rocks. Well, he didn't have to worry about the wind coming in. He was kind of down out of the ground. It would be depressing to live in there for 100 days, but when he was in there counting his millions of dollars every day, Andy killed a musk ox or something. He was set. He had the big food. He built a cache where the wolverines and stuff couldn't get in his food, but he was in a rock structure basically and had logs for a top on the roof. The wind wasn't come through, but he won because of where his structure was, and he killed a big animal, like you said. You can't.
You have geothermal at that point as well, right? You get down to bare earth like that before freeze comes. And, if you dig down enough in the rocks and you get kind of set up like that, you're going to have actually a little bit of heat coming up from the earth.
Really? I didn't know that either. I figured you should be on the cold. You figured you'd be on the cold ground.
He was better off than everybody. He was a little crazy though. I mean, he was a little different kind of dude, but he was a.
And we had spending 100 days, and all you see, because we had Coulter Barnes on a year or so ago, and he made it a long time.
He was number 3 on that. He was the third one.
But
left.
I mean, like, he was saying that the medical team, you do a wellness check every day, but I don't think they talk to you. Like, I don't think that you're having like I don't think you're having a whole lot of, you're seeing people, but you're not like casually chit-chatting with them.
Be like going to a doctor in China right now. You
well,
wouldn't
I mean,
know what the hell they're saying anyways.
They want you to be as alone as possible, and they don't want to, I guess, even give you the comfort of having a nice conversation for 10 or 15 minutes.
They want your mind to go.
Yeah. Right. He was peeing on a rock so he could have salt 30 days later.
Sure.
I mean, that's
thinking.
That is, but I mean, that's when you're alone when you're peeing on a rock to get salt.
Have you ever drank your own urine?
I haven't, but I have a good story for it.
Go ahead.
I was in the Northwest Territories, and I actually told this story in front of a theater and got a lot of chuckles. And this kid was, I hired this kid a few years ago. He's a man, but his name is Chris Kirkaby. And he's an insurance adjuster right now in Seattle, but I hired him. He's a film graduate and super good dude. And I took him up to the Northwest Territories to the Mackenzie Mountains through Arctic Red Outfitters. We were archery hunting Dall sheep and mountain caribou. And so we went out one day. It was me and 2 guys. That's how we do these trips. It's me and 2 photographers. So I had William Altman and Chris Kirkaby. And I was hunting with a very, very dear friend of mine named Ben Storak and his brother, Lorne Storak, and absolute mountain men, unbelievable horsemen, unbelievable, just as brass tacks as it comes as to be in this species. And so it was the 5 of us. And in camp that morning, I always get up early. I'm an early riser. So I was up early. I was just kind of messing around in camp, getting my gear together. And I started glassing. And I saw what looked like ants coming over the hill, and I glassed. I got my spotting scope out, and it turns out it was a line of bulls of mountain caribou, and they're way up at the tip of the top. And so when I saw Ben, he was out wrangling the horses, and I said, "Hey man, I saw some bulls up here," and he said, "Any good ones?" And I said, "No, nothing looked like it was a massive, but he's like, well, actually we call that Bull Ridge. We're heading up there today anyway, so maybe they'll stick around up there." Long story short, we go up there. And we all had a liter water bottle just like this, or if not this exact one. And we went up there, and it was about 85 degrees that day, maybe even warmer. And we are climbing, thousands and thousands of feet, and we are just pounding our water. And we get up to the top, and on the map, it shows that there are some streams up top. Well, we get up there, and those streams are dry. And we are out of water. And so we hike, we find this big bull, and we kind of get on him, and it takes us a couple hours to get into position to shoot him. It's 62 yards. And I went through target panic for a couple of years shooting my bow. And so I came to full draw, and I put my finger on this trigger, and I was kind of bringing my bow up to this bull, and I shot. I just literally rushed the shot and tried to time it. Just a horrible thing you can do in shooting. Tried to time, my arrow went right over his back. And that bull ran, and I felt so defeated because I just let the 5 of us down. I let myself down, but I really let these 4 other gentlemen that are working just as hard, if not harder than I am, down. And so we tried for the bull a couple more times, but we were out of gas. Like, our lips were starting to stick to our teeth. You know, our tongues had nothing. They're really, really sticky, and everyone's just kind of, there's no talking. You know, shoulders are down, hands are down. Everyone's kind of slinking. Well, we keep hiking for a few more hours, and then I notice Chris Kirkby, he falls to the ground. He's like steps on this rock and he falls to the ground. When you fall on the ground with you know, even when we're day hunting, we probably have 30 pounds in our pack, 40 pounds in our pack. It kind of drives his head into the ground, and he gets up and he ends up falling again. And Ben and Lauren said, hey, like we need to get down to the horses. We need to get down to camp. We're going to burn on down into the valley and we're going to get out of here. Donnie, round your crew up. You guys pick your way down and we'll meet you back at camp. And I hunted with these guys in the wilderness many, many times. They would generally not leave a client, but they knew we'd meet back up with them. And so they bomb down and leave. And as we're hiking down, Chris is really having trouble. He's going like 5, 6, 7 steps, and then he's falling, and we're going down a mountain. So he's falling down little cliffs. He's falling down little slides, and he's going to hurt himself, if not kill himself. So I stopped him and I said, hey, give all your camera gear to William, and then I'll take your backpack. And he was really against it, but he gives me his backpack and I put it on my front. So I have a full backpack on my back and a full backpack on my front. William's got double cameras, and he hands me his water bottle and it's full. And I said, Chris, your water bottle's full. And he looks at me, he didn't say a word, and he just started shaking his head no. And I said, did you pee in your water bottle thinking that we were going to have to drink it later? And he just quietly started shaking his head yes. And I said, welcome to the Sick Mansion, man. You're definitely the right guy for the job. And we ended up getting him down, and it's kind of another story, but it's the exact same day. I call it's literally the greatest drink of water I've ever had, but the three of us were zero. We were as dehydrated. Like, we're starting to pee like hard hat yellow. Like, it's starting to look sun-kissed orange. Yeah. Like, we are out of juice. We come down into the forest. We're probably 4 miles from camp, and we find this little spring, probably the size of a car hood, 2 inches deep, 3 inches deep, just this crystal clear, ice cold water bubbling out of the ground, formed a little puddle, and then started a little stream. And we sat there filling up one water bottle. We'd fill it up. Chris would pound it down, fill it up. William would pound it down, fill it up. I'd pound it down. We just did that like 5 or 6 times. Then we hiked back to camp and literally felt like superstars. But that was for a film release of The Other Side, and we were in Fort Collins, Colorado, and I brought him up into the front of the whole, literally a packed theater, standing room only, and told the story and said, this is Chris Kirkby. And when he came to work for us, I asked him what his goals were, and he said, I really want to see my name in the credits of one of your films. So I brought him down and I introduced the whole audience to him, and I said, I told him the story of him peeing in his bottle, and yeah, it is remarkable. But yes, I've not drank my own pee.
But you were close.
Oh yeah, I drink it, no problem. I drink your freaking pee. It wouldn't bother me in the least.
But
no problem.
But that's just that just goes back to how good was that water when you finally got it. And people don't ever, they never get to this privation point in their life where it's just like that. I'm sure that drink of water that you had was probably top 2 or 3 drinks that you've ever put to your lips. And it was
my number one. It's easily my number one. And I actually think about it probably every other day. It pops into my head.
Yeah. And so many people will go through life and never go through anything like that. Or that first bite of a fresh caught salmon that goes to your lips when you're just so hungry and everything's been on the line. And you finally get to ingest your hard work. You finally get to put it to your lips. And it's just so good going down. Nobody ever experiences that anymore because things are just, I'm thirsty, I'll go get a drink right now. I'll go get more water.
You guys are waterfowlers, obviously, right?
Yeah.
One time we were in the Arctic and we were very hungry. We had been, I'm not going to call it stranded, but a blizzard had blown in and we ran out of food. And we had to wait a couple of days to get picked up because the weather was too violent for a pilot to come in. And stupidly, we ran out of food because I shorted us food because I was positive we were going to kill a caribou. So I was like, hey, you guys, let's go short on food. We're going to kill a caribou. I've hunted this place 5 different years. Every single time I've killed 1, if not 2 bulls. Let's just go. Well, the caribou didn't migrate through there that year. We didn't kill a bull. We ran out of food. And we were sitting up on this hill glassing, and I could see 2 green-winged teal swimming around this pond about 1.5 miles away. So I went down there. I talked to the crew, and I was like, do you guys want to eat duck for dinner? And they're like, yes,
Yes,
please.
please.
I was like, okay. So it's the last week of September, I hike down there, sneak up to the edge of the pond. I arrow one of the green-winged teal, literally come to full draw, sneak up over the willows, put it right on her thoracic inlet, and I just squeeze my trigger. My arrow just goes right through her. She rolls over, just flops her wings a couple of times. She's dead. Stripped down to my underwear. There's skim ice on this pond.
Ooh.
I go out into this skim ice. I'm all the way up to, I think I probably got to about my armpits, grabbed this duck, came out, hiked 1.5 miles back up 1,000 feet back to my crew. That's what we had for dinner that night. 3 of us shared a green-winged teal.
There's not much meat.
How many green-winged teals have you gentlemen eaten?
A
There's
lot.
not a lot of meat on them.
No, like that's an appetizer, if anything.
Yeah.
Like you're not.
I mean, we've cut M&Ms. Oh yeah.
No, I've had a lot of green winged teal, and there ain't much to them.
I want to ask you a question. I'm going to start asking every guest we have. What's the
Yeah.
weirdest or most interesting thing you've seen in the woods, or something you can't explain? What comes to your mind is the weirdest thing you've ever seen outside?
That's a really good question. I've seen, one, and I was introduced to this. I didn't find it myself, but we found 3 dead humans in a cave in British Columbia. Again, it was not. We didn't find it. A friend of mine had found them, and then he said, "Hey, you guys want to see something gnarly?
You want to see a dead body?
Yeah, a little stand by me.
Little stand by
and
me.
we and so I said, yeah, we want to see something gnarly. So we went out on the ocean, and there's a cliff, and he's like, climb up this cliff and go in that hole and go to the back of that hole, and you're gonna see something. And I thought he was pranking us, right? I was like, there's gonna be something in there that's not gonna be very nice for us. And so we go up there, and there's looked like to be a dead man, a dead woman, and a dead baby.
Oh,
and,
shit.
And so it's old. It's very, very old. It's like a burial. Yeah, so it's a very like turn of the century clothing, old dishes. It looked like potentially there had been a death at sea from a ship or something like that. And then they had no other resources, so they carried the bodies up to this cave and put them in this cave as some level of burial.
Oh, okay. So it wasn't somebody that it wasn't a family that got stranded and went into this cave and met their demise. It probably happened at sea.
I really don't know the story, but their skeletons were in there.
That's
3 skeletons
crazy.
were in there.
That is weird.
And
shit.
so that's gnarly. And this next one is not. You're not even going to believe me when I tell you it's not that sensational, but it's the weirdest thing that I've ever experienced. One of the weirdest things I've ever experienced in my life is I was working for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service in Alaska, and I was in a fish trap. I was working a fish weir this summer, and I was counting fish and speciating fish and taking genetic samples and age samples. And in this fish trap is made out of steel and PVC pipe, and the PVC pipe is like an inch apart. And this fish trap was closed, totally closed, like an absolute cage. It's made out of aluminum. The back door was closed. The front door was closed. Both were totally closed, totally locked. And I had 2 king salmon in this trap, both about 40 pounds. Big kings, 2 females, 2 big females were in this cage. And I was going to hop down into the cage and sample both of them and then open the front door and let them out. And I've been camping now. I'm up there, not at this time, but I've been camping for about a month. But each time I'd go up there and work these jobs, I'd sleep in a tent for about 5 months. So I'm in there for the long haul. I'm in the wilderness for 5 months, living in a 2-person north face tent. And so I jump down into this trap, and they splash and go absolutely nuts. And I grab the one female and I put her in the cradle and I sample her and write everything down in her. We call it the Bible, but it's all her sample books. I pick her up. I let her outside the trap, get her good oxygen. She's never out of the water. Even the cradle is under the water. Get her some good oxygen. She explodes out of my hands like a torpedo and goes up to spawn. And I go back in the cage to catch the second fish, and it's gone. It just isn't in there. And like, it spooked me up so bad. I just was like, there's literally 2 fish in there. And I was like, oh my God, she must have knocked the front door down. I look at the front door, it's locked shut. And I mean, there's a millimeter of space on either side of the door. I go, oh my God, the back door must have fallen open. I go to the back door, it's locked shut.
What the hell?
So I'm like, oh, I must have broken pipes in this trap. So I put a mask on. I literally swim down to the bottom, look at every square inch of this cage. It's totally intact, total integrity. Still to this day, I have no idea where that damn fish went. And there was 2 of them in the trap. Literally, I'm looking down at 2 40-pound salmon in crystal clear water. And I literally looked. So they have these superstitions in Alaska. The Athabascan Indians and the Inuits have them. They have a guy called Grass Man, and he'll capture you in the forest when you're there at night. He'll capture you, and then he ties you up in the forest, like ties you up in with your arms out and your legs out, and he'll tie you up and he'll torture you in the woods. And they call him Grass Man. And then they also have little people, which are exactly like leprechauns. And they play tricks on you, and they have gold. And if you try to catch them, they kill you, or they maim you, or they do something evil to you. So literally, I jump in this trap, this fish disappears. And I was all by myself, and I'm surrounded by alders on the edge of this river. And I just was looking, I was like, this is the spookiest thing I have ever experienced. And I'm just looking all around. But I mean, those are 2, I've definitely experienced some weird things, but I just the other day, in April, I walked over a levee in Illinois, and I saw a whole herd of deer sleeping in the sun, all curled up like dogs, little fawns or not little fawns, but yearlings and does, and curled up right with them, like 2 feet away from them, curled up with them were 2 coyotes.
That's crazy.
Literally, all these deer and these 2 coyotes were all sleeping together in this big patch of sun that was probably the size of like a small above ground swimming pool. They're all sleeping in this little spot of sun, so sound asleep. Like all the coyotes had their tails like over their faces, covering their nose. Everyone was absolutely out when I came over the hill.
That is.
What do you think? That you think that coyotes were switching their diet and the deer could sense it? Like what the hell? That's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've spoke about this before, and I get a lot of flack from it. Like I've talked about this with Aaron Snyder and a few other guys, and like sometimes I hear some things come back to me, like guys call me like wolf lover and things like that. But I don't know. I can't explain it, obviously, but I do know that, or at least I think I know that coyotes and even like wolves and stuff, but like coyotes, I'm sure they kill deer year round, but I'm sure there's a lot of the time of the summer when the coyotes are eating grass.
Right.
And I saw a thing a few years ago. A guy had a trail camera set up in his garden, and somebody was stealing watermelons, these little watermelons out of his garden, and he set up a trail camera. And it was a coyote was stealing watermelons out of his garden, probably eating them, and I just think they're very adaptable. And so I have no idea why they were sleeping with this deer. I would think that any coyote coming near a deer would spark a response, but
all right,
who knows?
I got another question. One of the last questions for you. Do you Bigfoot or no Bigfoot? Do you believe in them?
I wish I did, man. I love Bigfoot stuff. Love the TV shows. Love all the inferences. I can't imagine an animal of that size lives in this day and age of thermal imaging and the military, surveillance that goes on, and then also with trail cameras, all that type of stuff. Like back in if it was 1950s. I would believe 100%. I would believe if it was the 1950s and we didn't have all this technology, I would 100% be a believer. But I'm at best, I'm skeptical.
Yeah, the common sense takes over now.
Well, I mean, when you lay out all the facts, the factors, like you said, the amount of trail cams that are out there on any given day.
Oh my goodness!
You would figure there'd be something.
Well,
and the technology on trail cams is so good now. You can get a live look at anything. The pictures are crystal clear. Anytime you see a trail camera picture of a Bigfoot, it's a shitty, blurry picture, and it's like, come on, we're getting pictures in 4K now, whatever. Let's just settle down.
The Indian legend is
they can disappear.
They're not seen unless they want to be seen, and that's why there's none on camera ever. Don't know how true that is. I'm not Indian. Just telling you what they say. My last question for you, Donnie. Aliens. You believe in the aliens? Because you've been a lot of places by yourself in the middle of the night. You ever seen some weird shit in the sky?
I actually, I have one alien story. It ends with a very logical response, but when it happened, I was kind of taken aback. I was in Alaska, in the Arctic Circle. It's a place that I really enjoy going, as you can tell from all my stories. I was by myself. I had arrowed a really large caribou bull, and he was probably 3 miles from my camp. I had to leave my camp. I was on a river. I had to hike up this mountain, and then down the backside of the mountain is where I arrowed him, and I butchered them all, and I took a load back to my camp. Then I hiked back to the caribou, and I had the rest of the meat plus his antlers, and I hiked to the top of the ridge. And so all I had to do was go down to my camp, and it was probably 1:30 in the morning, pitch black, ice cold, crystal clear night. Like the stars were like nothing you've ever seen. And I'm just sitting on the top of that mountain taking a break. And right in front of me, I see a red light come out and kind of get brighter. And then it goes dimmer. And then it almost looked like, to my appearance, it kind of streaked across the sky and then hooked and went away. And I just thought, holy man. I literally just saw something that there's no way I can explain it. I am not where people are. And so day after that, pilot comes and picks me up, and I get in his a little Cessna, and we're packing. He's rough, long hair. He's got a big gnarly beard. His coat is absolutely filthy. He's loading my meat, looks at my bull, and he's like, this thing's a hammer. For this area, this thing is an absolute hammer. Like big mass, just a cool bull. Puts in the plane. I get in there. I put the headset on. I'm sitting co-pilot, and he's like, getting the yoke. He's throttling up, and he's like, so how was your hunt? What'd you see? I'm talking. I'm like, hey, I saw something. He's like what? And I'm like, the other night I was coming on, I was sitting up here, and he goes, did you see a red light? I said, yes, I saw a red light. And he goes, yeah. He goes, if you're facing east from here, he goes, yeah, I forget what he said, 20 miles away or 30 miles away, or whatever, however far a human eye can see. He said there's a small Eskimo village over there, and there's a guy in the village with a truck. And if he hits his brake lights just right on the right night, you can kind of see a red streak go across like this area. And so that's what he told me it was, and made perfect sense to me. But,
well, that kind of,
I don't,
bummer.
Yeah, I don't know that I've ever seen anything like that. But as far as like aliens go, like, I don't know. I think, how Rogan's all up on this right now. He's talking, I don't know if you guys are aware of that, but he's talking about aliens a lot right now. In my opinion, I don't know, the things that these guys are seeing and experiencing, the logical side of my brain wants to say these are all military experiments. These are all military crafts. But like some of the things, the F-18 pilot, Fravor or whatever his last name is. Yeah, the Tic Tac.
Yeah.
If that's real, if that's not, I don't know. I don't know if that's something in the imagery or, I wasn't there. I'm not a fighter pilot, obviously, but like that type of stuff just doesn't seem, it defies what we know as physics, I think.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I mean,
I don't know. What do you guys, where do you guys live on that?
Everything. I want to believe in Bigfoot, but I'm kind of like you start looking at everything and then you're just like, but I mean, there is evidence of a Bigfoot like creature a long time ago, correct? Like the Gigantopithecus. What, I mean,
yep.
So there,
100%.
There is history, but I don't think that in this day and age, that's what people are seeing. I think they're seeing a bear that's walking on its hind legs or something, and whatever. Aliens is a different story because when you think about how big the universe is and how big our galaxy is, and like it's a big place. I mean, just think about the ocean. Like there's so much of the ocean that's on our planet that we don't know anything about. And space exploration is the same thing. And there's a lot of credible people like Fravor and so many other fighter pilots that are seeing these weird things. And there's also the they were a biracial couple back in the early 70s. I can't remember what their name is, but they were abducted. They all tell the exact same story. I can't remember what their last name is. Doesn't matter now, but I actually
filmed a UFO once. Actually, now I'll let you finish and then I'll tell you one more story, but go ahead.
So Bigfoot I'm out on, but I want to believe aliens. I would say it's highly probable that they are, especially if you look at what our congressmen are saying. Like, there's a lot of congressmen, and we had our congressman on a couple months ago, and he said there's two options. You only have two. Either it is the Russians and the Chinese, and they're that much further advanced than us in this avenue of fighter pilot, military equipment, or it's aliens. Those are your only two options, and you get to decide which one you think is the lesser of two evils.
First of all, think about it this way: we're aliens.
Yeah, I mean,
right?
Sure.
We are a proven. We are a race. We are a species of people that occupy a planet in a solar system.
Mm-hmm.
To think that there's one is ridiculous.
Yes.
Like, we are someone else's alien.
Yes.
Plain and simple. And so there has to be some level of, all it takes is, I shouldn't say all it takes, but the way we're built, it takes oxygen and water. There has to be oxygen and water in other places. I find that very hard to believe.
Well, did you see the picture from the telescope or whatever? Was it the Webb telescope? I want to say it was. They said that the picture that they got is the size. If you take a grain of sand and you held it out at arm's length into the night sky, that is the amount of space that this picture took to the naked eye. And it's filled with thousands of galaxies and just solar systems that are spinning.
Yeah, see.
So and that's a grain of sand at arm's length into the night sky. Now think about, that's not even a fraction.
It's infinite.
Yes. So
yeah, it's infinite.
I'm gonna go ahead and say aliens, probably so.
Tell us your story, Donnie.
Yes. So I was flying with a lake. I think it's Lake Clark Air out of Anchorage. We were flying south to. It doesn't really matter, but we're flying down to a small Eskimo village, or a small village on the Alaska Peninsula. Not an Eskimo village, but a small village on the Alaska Peninsula. I can't think of the name of it right now. But we were flying down there, and I was flying co-pilot with this gentleman. I believe his name is Nathan. He's one of their pilots, Lake Clark Air. And we're flying, and he taps me on the shoulder, and he's like, check this out. He's like, I've been seeing this thing a lot. And he's like, every time I see it, I report it to the Air Force or to the military in Anchorage. And he did, like, literally while I was on the headset, he reported it. And he was flying, and we're looking at his GPS. We're looking at his screen. I can see our airplane flying over the mountains and everything. I'm looking at everything in detail. And there's this little blip behind us that's coming up. And he's like, look at this thing, Donnie. He's like, essentially, we're looking at a UFO. He's like, and look at it's catching us. This is our flight speed, and look at it's catching us. And so it comes up literally on our port side. He's like, look, it's right off our port wing, and we're both looking out the window, and we can't see anything other than more snow-capped mountains. But the thing literally flies right past us on the radar and passes us and continues to fly out of our. And then he calls in, and he wrote down, he had a little data log, and he wrote it down, like where exactly we were. And he's like, I've been reporting it. And he's like, the military just keeps asking us, keeps asking me. He's like, just tell us when you see it and what it's, so he recorded what its speed would be, everything. But I actually filmed it on my cell phone, but I don't know if I still have it on there, but I literally filmed it, and you could just see this object just literally catching us and passing us in the air.
Jeez.
But you never did see nothing.
No, there's nothing outside the port side window, nothing. And it was a bright, sunshiny day. There were some clouds and stuff. We were flying through some mountains and stuff like that, heading down to the Alaska Peninsula, but nothing flew by the airplane. nothing that we could visually see.
I have a friend of mine 30 years ago that I played cards with all the time. He was a little bit older than me. He was probably 5 or 6 years older than me. Good guy. Not a bullshitter, never lied about I never knew the guy to even kid around about anything. Real nice guy, straight-laced guy. And he told me that he had a deer lease at his family owned some ranch at Jacksboro, Texas, which would be about 50 to 60 miles west of Fort Worth. And he was there hunting one day, and he said, Jeff, I'm sitting in a deer stand, and he said, something flies right over the trees. He said it wasn't a saucer-shaped deal. He said it was more like a tube, like a cigar type deal. And he says it goes over the next hill over there, and it goes down. He gave me the heebie-jeebies. He goes, whatever it was not normal to see. He goes, I didn't know what it was. And this is where the story gets really freaking weird. Now, this is a guy that don't bullshit, so I've never known him to ever bullshit anything. He said, I'm sitting in my deer stand, and he said, I see something moving, and I see these two little Wookiee-looking things walk by. He said, I'm not shitting you, Jeff. He goes, they had like aluminum foil on. He said, I'm not talking about something you see on TV, just like an aluminum foil looking stuff, and they go by. He goes 100 yards from me going the other way. And he goes, my fucking goosebumps are up on me. And he said, I got the shit out of there. He said, I'm done. He said, I ain't waiting until dark and walking back in the dark. He goes, I don't know if someone's hired some midgets to attack me. He said, I don't know what's going on. But he goes, it's got my attention. He says, he said, I'm telling you right now, it's the quickest I've ever opened and closed a gate, got in my truck and drove in my life. He said, I went to Jacksboro, went into Dairy Queen in Jacksboro, and he said, I pulled in there and got me a hamburger. And he said, I didn't want to tell nobody because I was scared to death there. Right. And he goes, Air Force trucks pull in.
Oh, hell.
With Shepherd Air Force Base in Wichita Falls is there, in Meacham Field. He goes, Air Force trucks pull in. And he goes, what are you guys doing? He goes, oh, we're just doing an experiment over here. We're looking for some things and blah, blah, blah. And he said, but there was a bunch of Air Force people around that town. And he said, they weren't there that morning when he got there. Right. And he said, I've never seen them there before. And so he took his ass back to Wichita Falls, and he said they did whatever they did. But he told me, he said, to this day, I know damn well that what I saw was not from our world. Because I don't know what it was, but he goes, I did not want to tell the Air Force people I saw anything. But he said, why else would the Air Force? So he said, I don't know what it was. I don't know if somebody else caught it. But he said, I'm telling you, I saw them little foil-covered bastards walking around in there. And he said, he said they scared the shit out of him.
Oh, man, that's crazy.
But the interesting theory is, and we're going to let you go after this, but the interesting theory is after the Roswell crash, it's like a hockey stick where we were with technology. Now, I mean, you could obviously say that maybe we invented the microchip and everything's just kind of springboarded off of that.
Reverse engineering.
Or did we see something? Did we get a hold of something at Roswell and were we able to reverse engineer it? And is that why you see, because I mean, you know, you had your television and you had some things, but ever since Roswell, it has just been whoop with technology. So
right.
Who knows? We'll probably never know.
Yeah, but who knows? I don't know.
Donnie, we appreciate your time so much. I know you have got a big trip ahead of you, so we wish you the best of luck. Stay safe out there.
If you ever want to come to Texas and shoot a green-winged teal with an arrow again, you're welcome to come down here. We'd love to have you.
We'll shoot something bigger. We can shoot cranes or speckle bellies or something. We don't have to.
I actually come down to Texas quite a bit.
Perfect. Well, just next time you're down here, you've got my number, so just shoot me a message and we can hook up. The boss guys are actually coming down, I don't know, sometime in December. But anyway, we'd love to have you anytime that you're out here, and good luck up there on the mountain, and stay safe, and we'll talk to you later, my friend.
Thanks, boys. Appreciate it. Thank you so
God
much.
Bless you, bud.
Bye.
Interesting cat. Interesting guy. Yes, 5 months. Woof.
That's a long time.
Man. Born from a different cloth to do that stuff. Yep. Guys like that amaze me. You know, it's
funny.
Everybody,
years too late.
Everybody that listens to this is like, man, I wish I was like that. No, you don't.
No.
You're not going to go 5 months. You're not going to go 5 days by yourself in a tent with nobody else.
I'm probably not.
He's one of 1%. He's 1% of the 1%ers. Interesting cat. Appreciate him being on here. Thank y'all for listening. We've got Dove Hunter showed up 11:15. The first one showed up, so I was early. I was off by an hour. All right. Thank y'all. God bless y'all, and have a great week.
Go look at all of our wonderful sponsors. It's hunting season, and we've got sponsors. Basically, anything you need, we got them. Boss Shot Shells, Dive Bomb Industries, Pacific Calls, Gundog Outdoors, Shin Gear Waders, Lucky Duck, Looking Glass Podcast, Alpha Outdoor Specialties, Bangtail Whiskey, Stanfield Hunting Outfitters, Dirty Duck Coffee, Ducks Unlimited, and Double T British Kennels.